Hi everyone, Amy here with Amy's Wares, and this is part 2 where I finish a few cards using some previously made backgrounds. Now I will link the part 1 of this in the video description box below if you want to see how I made these panels, but this is watercolor paper and I did some faux watercoloring with my Catherine Pooler ink pads. I'm going to cut these panels down with those stitched edge rectangle dies from LDRS, and I'm going to use some of these other crafty products to finish the cards as well. Now, my sweet friend Amber sent me a huge box of crafty goodies, and it was so exciting and fun to receive that. So I'm going to use a couple of the products that she sent me as well. And anything that is still available, I will link in the video description box below, as well as that link to the previous video. So here's a photo of the cards that I'm going to finish today. I did use those panels, but I did some different techniques to create different looks on the finished cards. Now you can see with that die cutting, it did cut that watercolor panel down slightly smaller than A2 size, so there will be a white border on that card base. And that's a heavyweight 110-pound classic crest solar white card base that I used. Now I ran this through off screen through my die cutting machine, and you can see it cuts the opening, but it just leaves the outline of these hearts. Now initially I was just going to put it right down on the card base, but then I thought, I have to turn this into a shaker. I just have to. So I'm shopping my critter book just to kind of put the whole scene together. I'm not really sure exactly where I'm going with this. I don't have a plan. I'm just kind of winging it in typical fashion, but I know I want some sort of critter to fill up that little space to the lower right of that opening. So I'm flipping through various different little cute my favorite things stamps here, and that's ultimately what I end up going with, is this cute little yellow bird. I think it was probably a Birdie Brown stamp set. If it's still available, I will link it below, but it very well could be discontinued. But use whatever you have. I'm sure you have some cute critters that you could incorporate into a design like this. And here I'm just cutting down a piece of acetate and putting some liquid glue around the opening to create the window for the shaker. Now here I'm sitting there thinking like, I should have used my micro dots here to put some adhesive on these hearts, but I had already put the liquid glue down around the outside. So here's my solution. I just kind of pounced off the excess so it didn't have too much glue oozage around the hearts, and thankfully it didn't make a hot mess, but usually that would happen to me. So I gave that a second to adhere, and then I have this scrap piece of adhesive backed foam. Now the brown doesn't really match, but in this case it's not really going to show. Here I have some nested circle dies from Hero Arts. I'm deliberately picking a circle that's bigger than the opening because I don't want that brown to show. So I want to create a shaker window to put all the little glittery bits in, but I don't want the brown to be evident from the front of the card. So I'm just lining this up, eyeballing it, and I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine off screen as well to create the opening in the foam sheet for the back of the card. Now you could absolutely do this traditional shaker way if you like to do it with foam strips. I like this because I feel like it makes it a little bit lower profile. It still gives you enough room for the little shaker bits to move around, but it doesn't make it quite as fat as I think it does when you use foam tape. So that's just a matter of personal preference, and I don't like seeing on the side of the card where the foam tape ends and begins. That just is, again, a personal preference. So here I'm just using some liquid glue and some weight to press this down, and then once that's ready to go, then I will just kind of lay down my little shaker bits on the card base. So I'm using this little piece of low tack tape just to hold it flat so I don't kind of launch my little sequins all over the place. But I'm just going simple with this pretty kind of iridescent white. And I'm going to remove this backer of the foam sheet, and realizing here this probably wasn't the best idea. I had the tape in the way at that point. And then I line this up centered on the card base, and that's going to close off my little shaker bits inside the card. So I also attached the cute little bird down in the lower right, and now I just need to pick a sentiment. So if you're a planning sort of crafter, you've probably got this all sorted and know exactly what sentiment and where. But me, I just wing it. usually the sentiment is a bit of an afterthought. So that's where these strips really come in handy. This is another LDRS product. It's a small business in Michigan, if you aren't familiar, but these strips are amazing. So you get a stamp which has, I don't know, maybe like 10 sentiment strips or something on it, and then you get a coordinating die and it cuts them all out in one go with that cool fishtail, edging on it. So that's what was in that storage book. I have one book now for my critters, like you saw. I have one for all the strips, and then I have one for like die cut, bigger word dies, like kind of like this one that you're seeing here from Concord and Ninth. So that's my storage solution. That's how I'm able to batch. And now I'm on to the second card. I recently got these. I think these are a newer product from Concord and Ninth. I absolutely love that company. I love their products. I just think they're so cool, and I love these big, imposing die cuts. And as you can see, you do get the shadow layer as well. So I'm just going to cut the words themselves out of this custom-made cardstock here just by swiping my ink pad, and then I'm going to cut the shadow layer out of white, and then once I run that through off screen through my die cutting machine, that easily pops out, and then I'm just going to attach it to the white shadow layer and then use some liquid glue just to adhere that down right onto the panel. And as you can see, it has a nice white border just like the other ones. I attach it right down to a card base, and this design is pretty simple. I'm just going to add a little bit of blingage, those exact same white iridescent sequins. I have my jewel picker and the liquid glue. I'm going to lay it down in odd numbers, so 3 on the top, 2 on the bottom, and that's going to finish this second card. So super easy. The first one was a little bit more labor intensive. This one, really easy. Just slap a die cut on it. Now this stamp, sadly, I don't think it's available. I wasn't able to find it when I searched, but this is another one that my friend Amber sent me, and I think I audibly squealed when I saw it because I thought it was so cool and I've never seen it before. It's from a company called Papertrey Ink, and then I realized upon doing this that the coordinating die was also in that set, so I think I squealed a second time. But anyway, it's so cool. It has 3 layers. So you have the word letter, and then you have the shadow, and then there's like a detail to the shadow, and it is so cool. So what I'm doing here, you can see I'm doing some second generation stamping. If you've worked with Catherine Pooler, you know those ink pads are legit. They are so juicy and so pigmented, and I didn't really want it to be that dark to use with my third card panel. So I'm doing this one like full throttle Catherine Pooler in your face ink, and then I'm doing the second generation stamping just to get a little bit more of a subtle color for that card. So I'm going to save the really vibrant one. I'm going to throw it in my storage box and use it for a future card. But here I'm just using the coordinating die once I, turn it around a million times and figure out which way it goes. It's really not that complicated. I was just having a moment, struggling a little bit. But I ran it through my die cutting machine, and that's going to create the sentiment for this. Now I'm thinking it's not really standing out enough. So I have my own makeshift yellow foam. I actually put some 2-way adhesive from Scrapbook on that to make it adhesive backed. But I decided to cut a second layer out with that coordinating die and then just kind of kick it off to the side to give it even more of a shadow, and then it'll allow it to kind of not only bring in more yellow into the composition, but also help it kind of pop off the background and be a little bit more substantial. Now here I'm showing you, I'm just going to save that because you can see I didn't do a great job lining up the die. So I'm going to save that as a template. So I'll just cut out in the future and then stamp by using that template after the fact. So I was just showing you that there, that's my plan for the future if I remember to do that. So here are the finished cards. You can see this shaker. You can see a little bit of the brown if you look closely from the side, but it's very low profile. It's not going to be super heavy or bulky for shipping. So like I said, that's the way I like to make shakers. Now here's the second card. Again, probably similar dimension actually to the shaker one, just because of the foam tape that I used to adhere that panel to the front. And then this one, again, a little bit of dimension from that popped up sentiment. So Very easy, nothing complicated with these designs, but it was fun to go back and actually use up these, fun panels that I made in that previous video. So here's some more videos for you to check out. I appreciate you spending time with me, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.